Hi, everyone. I'm so happy that you could join us for the skill sharing conversation. I'm Stephanie Sandala. I'm Programming and Outreach Specialist at LibraryLinkNJ. I'm so thrilled to introduce Aimee Fernandez-Puente, who is, I'm sorry, Aimee, I totally forgot your title, but she's at Elizabeth Public Library. But Aimee is going to share all about local history collections, which I'm super interested in learning more about as well. So Aimee, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Sure. Does everybody hear me?
Yes, you sound great.
Okay. My name is Aimee Fernandez-Puente. I am a library associate and head of the Local History and Special Collections Department here at the Elizabeth Public Library. I know today we're going to be talking about establishing a local history collection at your library, and there's people out there who probably have some experience, possibly even more experience than I do. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on our collection, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So the Elizabeth Public Library, traditionally, it always had a local history collection. When it was first founded in 1912, it was part of our art department. In about the 1950s, when we had additions built in 1968, what they did was they created a separate Elizabethtown reading room. And it was a very active collection until about the mid 80s, early 90s, when for whatever reason, there was loss of interest in the collection, and the collection was actually dispersed throughout all the building, different departments. Some materials went into our reference collection, some materials went into storage, some materials were sent out to branches. So back in about 2007, we received a donation from a family to rebuild the local history collection. And at that time, I want to say that they attempted to build a formal local history collection again. What they did was they pulled some of the materials that they thought may be local history related, and they put it in a room. They built up a wall. They added a door to the room. However, the collection had not been cataloged, and access to the collection was basically somebody would just leave their library card at the periodicals desk, and the door would be open for them, and the person would be on monitor in the room for an extended amount of time. Nobody really checked in what was going on. So during this time period from about 2007 to about 2013, when we started working on creating a formal local history collection functioning the way you would expect it to, a lot of materials walked out the door. Or they were cut. Yearbooks especially. Yearbooks, always check your yearbooks. So in 2013, we did get a new library director, Mary Faith Schmiel, and she had done what is called a CAPES evaluation of the collection out at, I believe it was Red Bank. So when she came here, the first thing she did, at that time, I was the library associate for the reference department. She decided, let's formalize the local history collection. Let's make it something that's actually usable and let people know that we actually have materials. The first thing we did is the reference department, including myself, started going through the library and pulling everything we thought may be tied to Elizabeth history, maybe tied to Union County history, materials that were rare that we saw didn't have digital versions available, or just materials that you couldn't find anywhere else. And we started putting them into that room that had been built. The room at this point was on complete lockdown. We did not permit anybody access to the collection while we were doing this. We kept doing that, and then we submitted an application to have a CAPES evaluation. Now, for people who don't know what CAPES evaluation is, it is a Caucus Archival Projects Evaluation Service that is offered through the Mid-Atlantic Regional Archives Conference and the New Jersey Historical Commission. If you go to the New Jersey Historical Commission's website, and you go where they have all their funding opportunities and grants and scroll down, you will see a link to apply for a CAPES grant. Essentially, it's free. You don't spend any money on this. What you do is you submit your application, and if you get approved, what they'll do is they'll send a professional archivist with years of experience out to your site, and they will go through your entire collection. And they'll do a recommendation, like an actual final report that you will receive, giving you guidelines on what you need to do to maintain your collection, what should be weeded out, what shouldn't be weeded out, the correct temperature control. Like when they did ours, we had Elsa Lynn Palmisano come to ours. She was basically in the library for an entire day. We took her everywhere, into our basement, our sub-basement. Because our building is so old and we are Carnegie Library, we have a sub-basement storage area that's dry. We took her up into our attic space. We took her everywhere. When she saw the extent of the materials we had, she basically warned me, because at that point, our supervisor and our assistant director and director were already thinking, well, Amy's going to take on this project. That's what happens when you're known for being the neurotic organizer in the building. And also, I'm actually from Elizabeth. So I knew a lot of the history already going into this, where a lot of the librarians I was working with were not from Elizabeth and didn't have that background local history knowledge. So it was just a little bit of an advantage. And they said, okay, this is going to be Amy's project. Basically, I used that final report to first get the collection established as far as what do we need to do for temperature control for the materials, since we do have a separate room. Which materials do we want to keep in the room, and which materials should we pull out and do as a separate collection? Now, our current collection, what we've grown it up, like what we've basically built it up into now, is what used to be the original local history room is now just our archives. It's where we store all our materials. October of 2021, we built a separate reading room that is just off of that. The reading room is basically temporary walls that we had built up within archways so that we didn't have to do all the formal historic preservation site and everything, evaluations, everything, because they were temporary walls. So we have the separate reading room. We do have the archive room. We also oversee our microfilm collection. Since most of our collection went digital, we only kept on site anything having to do with the Elizabeth Daily Journal, which was one of the prominent New Jersey newspapers. And we're literally the only site in the country that has the full extent of the Elizabeth Daily Journal. We kept Star Ledgers, New York News. We have a lot of census, microfilm. And then we also created a separate genealogy reference collection. So anything that was general genealogy, general New Jersey genealogy, we went ahead and created a separate collection. So right now, our local history and special collections is made up of Elizabethan County history materials, New Jersey history materials, microfilm collections, our genealogy reference collection, and our art collection. And that was one of the last things that I took over. And that was basically, we found all this original artwork that we had for years stored in this room that nobody even knew about. And we stumbled across all the art. So it is a large collection. And right now our staff is, I'm a full-timer. I have a full-time principal library assistant that works with me and two part-time library assistants that work with us. As far as working with the collection itself, the number one piece of advice I can always give anybody is start gathering your materials. If you're just starting to establish it, pick a location where you're going to place this collection. Start gathering the materials. But most importantly, if you can, apply for that CAPES evaluation. It is a godsend when you're just starting out doing this. Another recommendation I personally found that really helped me a lot, since I am not a librarian and I didn't come with that archive experience, I joined NJLA's History and Preservation section, and I got to know a lot of the members in there, and they kind of became mentors for me to know who do I have to ask about this and give guidance. There's wonderful workshops that they put together that can teach you some hands-on skills, and they're just there to always answer questions. And that's one of the things I love, that they were so welcoming, and they're always so excited when they see that there's a new archive being formed or a new local history collection. So I would say those were my two first serious recommendations. Another thing I would say, which I'm glad we did, is while we were building up this collection, we went ahead and started creating policies once we got our CAPES evaluation back, and we started looking at what other local history departments had as their policies. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it's good just to see what somebody else is doing and maybe change the wording. Make sure you get everything approved by your board of trustees if you have one, and have them sign off on these documents and have them be made as part of the policies of your library. That has been really helpful for us because it establishes as an official local history department. We also reach out to a lot of the local history organizations in our community. So what we have right now is called the Elizabeth Destination Marketing Organization. It was founded about 8 or 9 years ago, and they created a branch that is just the history organizations in the municipality. And we have quarterly meetings. We work together on special events, special projects. But the good thing about that I found specifically for local history is they've been directing a lot of traffic to us. And it has built up our presence within the community, within the county. And they're great partners just to have, because we've gotten donations because of these institutions letting people know that we exist. So it's something you don't have to 100% do yourself, but to get your reputation out there, to try to build your collection, that's what I would recommend as a good place to start. Kind of look at what are the historical organizations around you that you can potentially work with. And we're constantly, we literally during the COVID closure, a lot of the Catholic schools and a bunch of the Presbyterian Episcopal churches in the city closed down permanently. We were contacted by all of them to come do last minute rushes to pick up all their yearbook collections, all their archives, like all their records. And they let those people from the outside know we have those materials. So always keep that in mind, like you want to start making those connections. But before anything else, like I said, start gathering what you have in your building already. Definitely do that CAPES evaluation if you can. Like apply for it. It's free. It's not going to hurt you in any way. It gives you that guidebook. And if you can, join NGLA, HMP. You'll make so many great connections there that will be great references. I think at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to everybody for discussions. And if anybody has other ideas that work for them or suggestions of things that they did at their location, I know we're not all the same. We're not going to be all the same size library. So some things that may work for us may not work for others. Okay, Stephanie, back to you.
Yeah, anyone can feel free to chime in. You can unmute yourself and chime in, or you can always just comment and chat, and I can relay, your information to everyone. So yeah, anyone can go ahead and get started.
Hi, my name's Katrina Swaff. I'm from the Somerset County Library System. I just wanted to piggyback off of the idea of getting connected with the History and Preservation section. And I had mentioned in chat that MERIC, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Archives Conference, is another useful place to connect with archives and local history folks. They have a New Jersey chapter that doesn't meet as much with as History and Preservation, and sometimes they do joint meetings. And they also have some pretty awesome conferences. There's one coming up at the end of April, which is online. It's only $25 to attend. So, and no, I'm not being paid to endorse this. I'm just, it sounds like I'm doing an ad, but they're a great organization. I've met, we've met some cool people at the conferences.
Yeah,
right.
Katrina, just to follow up, it's $50 for non-members. So if you join MARAC, which is only $45 a year, I believe. But well, you're still spending money, but there you go.
But yeah, cool people. And all right, somebody else can take it away.
Well, I did see a question in the chat from Jennifer. I think this is for Aimee. Is it how large is your collection? And is there digital access to any of the collections?
Okay. Our collection is pretty large. Published materials, we are at about, I'm trying to think because I just did the monthly statistics for the library. I want to say we're at about 7,000 published materials, and it's going to be combinations of manuscripts, books, pamphlets, items like that. The collection is still not fully cataloged. That's one of the things that we decided to do from the get-go, because financially the institution can't afford to get a separate archival database or anything like that software. The decision was made to go ahead and just catalog everything into our current OPAC system, which is Searchy Dynex Workflows, because it does allow for links to digital materials and items like that. So we've been working on that. As far as digital access to the collection, right now, the main thing you have digital access to would be like the Elizabeth Daily Journal to a certain extent, because that was the first digital project I took on, digitization project. Like I had mentioned before, the Elizabeth Daily Journal was like the main newspaper from about 1870s to about 1991. And we're the only site in the entire country that actually has the full extent of it. I know Rutgers has some other locations may have sections, but we're the only site. And unfortunately, when the newspaper went defunct, their morgue was tossed into dumpsters. All their masters, microfilm masters, were tossed into dumpsters. So we decided early on, look, we have this collection, it gets heavily used, it's decaying very quickly. Let's apply for grants. I was able to get 2 consecutive New Jersey Historical Commission history project grants to get digitization done. We've done 1 Union County special projects grant to work on it, and I just got another one. And we're having to do it in small portions because it is a huge collection. The back collection is digitized and is accessible by anyone on our website, and it covers from January of 1872 through April of 1937 right now. We're looking to continue the digitization with the next round of projects that we're doing this year over the summer. So that's the main thing I would tell you, especially if you're looking for local history materials that have to do with Elizabeth. Otherwise, the majority of the materials are physical documents, physical items within our local history department.
Okay, thanks, Aimee. I do see a follow-up question from Mary Ann asking for you again. Was the digitization of the microfilm handled in-house or by an outside vendor?
Outside vendor. I know my limitations. We actually use Innovative Document Imaging. A lot of the people in the state know them, IDI. They're the ones that are handling all our digitization. And we went with them because A, the price was good. B, they actually provide you with the Digifind It portal, and everything gets uploaded. And the cost was really well for the maintenance throughout the year of that website. And they're really great to work with. They're really easy, flexible. Anytime you have a question, you get a response, you can get a hold of them right away. So we've been working with them for the last couple of years for all our digitization.
Oh, I do see a question from Patty asking if you have guidelines or recommendations for cataloging materials.
I can actually answer this. As far as cataloging the materials, Elizabeth Public Library is part of LMXAC. And if your institution is part of LMXAC, you know that they have their own in-house cataloging department. Because of the nature of our materials, we had to apply for special permission for me to be able to do original cataloging of the materials. And I had to meet, I can't remember her name right now. I had to meet with one of their head catalogers, and she kind of tested me and walked me through the process as far as to make sure I could handle the cataloging. As far as learning how to catalog, we used to have a head of our tech services department who did all our original cataloging prior to us joining LMXAC. And she went ahead and taught me how to do original cataloging prior to my joining the reference department. What I did do, though, to help learn more is I started looking at ALA, all their cataloging guides that they put out. There's all these guides that are available, and you can actually find them digitally available. We've purchased some we're still in the working stage, and we downloaded them. There were guidelines for cataloging rare materials, cataloging maps. I had to teach myself cartographic cataloging, which took quite a while. But yeah, I say, first of all, be a part of a consortium. Make sure that within your institution, you're permitted to do original cataloging yourself. If you're not, then either see if you guys can do copy cataloging. If you have materials in your collection that another library has already cataloged, then you can go ahead and do the copy cataloging. If that's not the case, then my recommendation is, if you have professional catalogers on staff, see if you can get your hands on some of those manuals or guidelines. You may have to pay for them. Your institution may want to invest in that. I think it's worth it in the long run, because yeah, when it comes to your local history collection, a lot of it is going to be your own cataloging. You're going to have to enter it. Now, this depends on whether you're going to do like we are doing. We're doing it into our general OPAC that we're cataloging into. If you're looking to do a separate archival database, there is software out there that you can purchase. For us, unfortunately, the price is prohibitive because a lot of them are, the fees are based on your population. In the city of Elizabeth, we have over 120,000 people. So the prices were just like, I want to say a good half to 60% of our just materials and database budgets. So we were like, we can't afford this. So we had to come up with a plan. And sometimes that's what you have to do. Speak to your administration, figure out what works best for your institution as far as cataloging and how to make the materials available to the general population.
Okay, thanks, Aimee. I do see a great question in the chat from Jennifer asking if a lot of people come in doing genealogy research, and if you have partnered with any New Jersey genealogy organizations to make records available for that purpose.
We haven't partnered. We do get quite a large, I would say our number one request, because we do provide remote research, our number one request is always genealogy related. Do we have a lot of genealogy organizations that come in to do research and we've gotten to know their researchers? Yes. Have we partnered with any of them yet to make any of our materials available through them and so on? No, we haven't done that so far. Like I said, we're still in the process because even though we pulled most of the materials, we're still finding every day. I have an entire storage room upstairs on our third floor or fourth floor, which contains tons of materials that still need to be transferred down to local history. But I'm like, okay, take our time, and we're doing it piece by piece. Would I love to do that? Yes, I would absolutely love that, because it is, we get so bombarded with genealogy. And I'm going to say, always around the holidays. In October, we get nonstop, like bombarded with it. And a lot of it falls on my lap, even though I have a staff, like I said. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was really helpful. And if anyone has any more questions for Aimee, feel free to put them in a chat or just unmute yourself. And feel free to share your experiences if you have local history collections at your library, if you're starting out, or if you have one, have had one for a while. We're happy to hear any experiences.
Yeah, I see Katrina Swaff had mentioned the one at Yale. Yes, I have used theirs in the past. And you will find a lot of universities have made their cataloging guides available online, because I think I've also used University of Chicago when I had to do the cartographic cataloging. So yeah, you will find them out there. It's just figuring out what you need and just really looking and digging until you find what is available out there for you.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, does anyone else want to chime in and share their experiences?
Hi, this is Teresa Bayless from Somerset County Library System. I'm the manager of technical services. We have branch libraries who are currently working on local history, their own local history collections. I see you, Jenny, and Katrina. And what we've done so far is, from a tech services perspective, our cataloging librarian, Katrina, who's also the metadata librarian, and myself have cataloged the physical materials from branch local history collections. And we also have a tech services staff assistant who scans photos or other non-book materials and then enters that metadata for those materials and connects those digital items into a system called Biblioboard Creator, which is a curated multimedia collection. It's a vendor, so you have to have a relationship with them. And then eventually, I believe, though we haven't completely finished, the plan is to get those materials into the Digital Public Library of America. It's sort of a work in progress. This is definitely not finished.
Yeah, it's an ongoing project, always with the local history collection. Our director, she likes to always tell me, you have work for the next 20 years, because it's just constantly ongoing.
Yeah, and just yesterday, another, mysterious box emerged from the depths of a storage room with photos of various departments, so eventually we'll get to those too.
Yeah, I call those the Indiana Jones moments.
It's great.
You think you have everything, and then you find something else. We just had Trinitas Regional Medical Center. They were recently purchased by Robert Wood Johnson, and their entire archive is getting transferred to us. So they just started doing the transfer yesterday. And even that is like, we're freaking out a little because they brought 4 bankers boxes and we're expecting like 20 bankers boxes of materials. And when I looked at it after they brought the boxes, nothing is organized. Nothing is in folders, nothing. They basically just dumped everything into boxes and is like shipping it. And we see that a lot.
And I see a great question from Leslie in the chat. If anyone has any good ideas about identifying the contents of photos, this could be a question for Aimee or for anyone who has experience with this, because I know sometimes we do get these collections and we don't always know how to identify the contents of photos. So if anyone has any ideas or suggestions, feel free to chime in.
I know here at the Elizabeth Public Library, what has worked in the past for us is if none of the historical organizations in town that I work with can identify the photograph, I've actually posted them on Facebook. There's a group called I Grew Up in Elizabeth, and there's a lot of historians like that are members of that group, and they've been able to identify some of the images for us if it's something that, again, we didn't know. But you're going to come across a lot of images that you just cannot identify. I will say this, and this actually helped us out. So in addition to my staff, I do have 4 volunteers. All 4 volunteers are retired librarians from Elizabeth. One is the one that I mentioned before who taught me how to do the original cataloging. So she's helping out with a lot of the original cataloging that we have left to do, which is years worth. But the other 3 retired librarians have worked in Elizabeth going as far back as the late 1950s, early 1960s. So they've been really helpful in identifying images that are before my time, but that they recognize from being from the township itself. So sometimes what you may want to look at is posting them on social media and see if you get any bites that way, or if you have volunteers that are from the municipality, that grew up in the municipality, they may have a better idea of what the images are of, and they can help you go ahead and start identifying items.
That's a great idea, Aimee, and I had not thought of that. So I appreciate that suggestion.
Thanks so much. That's really well helpful. We have boxes and boxes of slides from college events that nobody ever labeled.
That's normal. Yeah, we had to do that too. We received, the administration office a couple years ago decided to transfer the entire library's archive, like everything having to do with the library, over to the local history department. And I was so lucky that because I do have those 4 librarians that are volunteering who have been here since like forever, they were able to go through the photographs. I am not kidding you. It's 2 4-drawer, 5-drawer black file cabinets full of photographs. They knocked it out in 2 months. Identifying every photograph, the people in the photographs, what the events were, and organizing everything for us. So sometimes you just really do have to utilize the people, the community that you have there to help you do some of this work, because that's the only way you're going to be able to do this.
No, we had thought about having a retirees party, and you could only come if you were willing to sit down and look at photos.
You'd be surprised how much they love doing that. These women, when they get together, they would spend like a good 2 hours just talking about an event and the picture and putting items in there and like figuring it out. So you'd be surprised. Like they love reminiscing.
Yeah, great oral history opportunity too.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Excuse me a minute. I've got a reference question.
Okay.
And if anyone else has experience with local history collections, feel free to share.
Hi there. My name is Kyle Brinster. I'm the local history and genealogy librarian at the Burlington County Library. I have kind of a question for Aimee or for anyone who's had this experience. I'm relatively new to the role. I've been here about a year. I'm the first person whose full-time job is this. Otherwise, it's been kind of a, someone's second or third responsibility. So we just got a grant, our website basically is my question. We are just getting a grant mostly to build up a space on our website for local history and genealogy collections. And, long-term thought is, being able to put digital exhibits or stuff like that up there. But I guess I'm wondering, what resources do you find helpful to put on there? Do people reference the website? Does it draw people in? Especially, our genealogy crowd does skew a little older and may or may not, even if it was a robust website, be able to find those things.
I think like for the Elizabeth Public Library, yes, I agree with you. It does tend to skew a little bit older, the people who are interested in our materials. So in our case, what we did is on our main library website, under one of the departments, if you go to our website, you go under departments, you go to local history. What we did is we created a main page that has the information for making appointments to utilize our collection, but it also has individual groups for like source materials for local history, source materials for genealogy, and so on. And what we included there were the things we noticed was getting asked for the most. And like I said, because we hadn't started digitizing anything until we started the newspaper, what we did was we created inventories, and it was basic like Excel spreadsheets saved as PDFs, and we linked those on the website so people know this is what we have, and just guide them like basically to what they would need to do to access the materials. In our case, we do not have like one of the special archival databases that lets you create a beautiful website to go on with it. And yes, every time I see them, I'm like, I wish I had one. But I get it. We can't afford that. So you have to figure out a way of making it work for your institution and your population more than anything else. And in our case, that has worked. Having just that page on our website with those links. And we also link into things like the New Jersey State Archives, the Newark Public Library, the Plainfield Public Library, the county clerk's office. Like whatever we saw we were getting the most requests on, those are things we made sure to include links for on our website, just so it's easier for people to go ahead and find the resources. And even for our in-house staff, I'm not here 24/7. So if our information adult services get a question and we're not in the building, they can go ahead and just say, oh, if they go to this link, that should take them. Does that answer some of your question?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much, Aimee.
I have a question. We have 2 yearbooks that we received, and they have newspaper clippings throughout as they apply to people on various pages. And one of the things we're trying to work out is how to deal with the newspaper clippings. We have we're gonna scan the clippings, and one idea I had is that with each digitization, the metadata can say it was between page so and so, between page 1 and 2. But does anybody have any other bright ideas on how to deal with that? Yeah.
We haven't gotten to that point yet. Like, we haven't started scanning any of our yearbooks yet. Like I said, our priority was the Elizabeth Daily Journal at microfilm. But what we have been doing is we did have a pre-existing vertical file, genealogy vertical file, that's clippings and biographies and information about people from Elizabeth and Union County. So we do keep, anytime we do research for anyone, we've not only just added the name onto our online Excel spreadsheet of who the person is and what material we have on them, but we also keep a copy within that vertical file. I wish I could say we're digitizing it, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, no, we're just trying to figure out, because somebody took the time to intentionally put that clipping in there.
Exactly.
So we're just trying to figure out the best way forward. Oh, and it looks like I got a suggestion in the chat. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Katrina, there's the question from Kathy too. Maybe suggesting removing the clippings to stop acid migration. Are they attached to the book itself?
No, they're just tucked in between the pages.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's a little bit better. Okay.
Yeah, I think we were planning. Yeah, that was one of the things that options we were talking about, is just removing the clippings and putting them in acid-free enclosures of some sort. But I mean, at least this kind of helps confirm that our ideas were on the right track.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No, thank you. That was a great question too. Yeah, and if anyone else wants to share, feel free to go ahead. I don't want to call you out, Jennifer, but I liked how you were doing a research guide on genealogy. So that seemed really interesting. I saw you mention it in the chat earlier. So that seems really cool too. And I guess I have a question for you, Aimee. What is your most frequent question that you get? I know you mentioned genealogy, but is it anything specific related to genealogy? I was just curious also.
The number one question we get are for obituaries.
Oh, okay.
It's always, like, that tends to be the number one question, is for obituaries. I would say then the second question after that, and everybody gets this, I think, at one point or another. People have reached out quite a lot about that they think their house is haunted and they want us to help with research on the property itself. So we get quite a bit of few of those, which, it is what it is. We'll do the research on the property and send them whatever information we can find. But obituaries, definitely obituaries is like number one. I would say that anytime near the holidays, we'll get not only an increase in obituaries, but we also tend to get more of an increase in local history questions in general about architecture, histories of certain locations. I heard this story about, for example, Hannah Caldwell. Is it true? And we try to find the primary sources so that they have like what the story was that was printed at that time. But it's mainly like that. And then every once in a while we get like the picture question, like, oh, I have this picture, I can't identify this person, can you guys figure out who this is? And to a certain extent, I want to say it's like a 50-50 type of deal, because if there are notations on the photographs, it can kind of help us like narrow down the research. But if it's like there's no information whatsoever, then we're kind of like, okay. So, but yeah, I would say obituaries is number one.
Yeah, thank you. That was really helpful. I'm always curious about haunted houses too, so I could understand why so many people come in and ask about that. So,
oh yeah.
yes. Does anyone else get a lot of genealogy questions or obituary questions at their libraries as well?
We get a decent amount of genealogy questions generally. We have like a genealogy interest group that we're trying to start that meets once a month to try and like get some of the people who are interested to talk to each other. But that has not been working for us so far. I think in part because we don't have a ton of materials here at this location. Like we have access to Ancestry. I can give people walkthroughs for other resources. And make recommendations of places to find things, but we don't have like a reading room of local history, obituaries, and that sort of thing. But that's just my experience, so I don't know what other people are working with.
No, Denny, I get it. I feel like space is always an issue of where to put everything. So yeah, I completely get it.
You can see my construction paper above my local history books that we keep in the back so no one steals them, next to all of my boxes of other just local history stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of highlights one of those concerns is when I tell people stuff gets stolen out of local history collections, they kind of look at me surprised, but they do. You'd be surprised how much when I first started working with the collection, I found an old inventory that was done in the 70s of the items we should have had. And even running an inventory on our catalog, our old catalog system, it said we should have had so many items. I want to say at least 40% of those items are completely gone. They're not marked as discard. They just walked out the door. So I think anybody that's establishing a local history collection, one of the things you should really think about is where you can put this collection that, yes, it's accessible to a certain extent, but you have some control about like overseeing it and making sure your items don't vanish. I think, especially here in the state of New Jersey, we're just really pushing for all this local history and archives and everything. And you see other states that have been doing it for like decades upon decades. So it's kind of like you're kind of protecting it, but you also have to make it accessible, but protect it in a way that, yeah, it doesn't walk out your door. So.
Hello?
Hello?
Oh, sorry. Not just in the public library, I think in the school libraries, that's also a problem. The books do walk. You would be surprised. I don't know. We're split between, we're not just in one school all the time in the library, it's like a shared space, but books are definitely gone, you know, when I come back. So I can see, I mean, I would think it would be a little bit better at the public library or university level because you have, what do you call it? Well, I don't know if you do that with the archival material, but you know, you have like the security system where the books beep, but probably the archival material is not like marked like that.
Okay. In the case of us at EPL, we made the decision from the get-go not to put security strips in our materials because we keep the more valuable items and the more rare items. Like our local history collection right now is completely locked down. The only way you're going to have access to it is if you make an appointment with me. and my staff and I pull the materials for you, and you utilize them in our enclosed reading room. Prior to that, it was more open, where somebody just left their library card or ID with the desk outside near the microfilm area, and you would come, be let into the space. And like I said, nobody monitored you and things got damaged. We did recently, a couple years ago, do an RFID system for all of our materials. So our genealogy reference, because it is kept out in the public floor, that we did make sure to RFID tag everything. And I've gotten our staff in the habit that at least twice a year, we do a full inventory of the collection to make sure nothing has walked off. And thankfully it hasn't, knocking on wood. But everything that we keep, only because the concern was the glue on the strips. If somebody decides they want to steal something and they rip the strip, now they're damaging the material. So we you have to figure out what works best for your setup, I would say. But as far as sticking RFID tags on something, if it's a recently published book, I may be more willing to do it. If it's something like we have materials going back to like the late 1700s, early 1800s, I'm not going to stick an RFID tag because that's just going to damage the material. And those are the type of materials we make sure are kept inside the archive under lock and key. And when I say lock and key, we have very limited access to. Right now, it's only the local history staff, our head of maintenance, our head of tech, and administration office have one key. That's it. Nobody else has keys to the actual archive room. And that's basically just materials.
So do people go inside of there and they have to make appointments, or like how does that work? Or you just bring the things?
They make the appointments with us. We do have an appointment request form on our website that they would fill out and submit electronically, or they can fax it or mail it to us. And I contact them back and we schedule a date and time for them to come in. We usually give about a 2-week window from when they request to the appointment, just to give us time to pull the materials that they're going to need for the research. Because in addition to everything we have on this floor, I did start, because we did receive so many donated archives during COVID. We do have a sub basement that used to be part of our federal government depository library collection. Elizabeth is like moving away from that, so they're weeding that collection out. And as they weed that collection, I've been moving items that don't get heavily used down there as almost like an offsite storage for us. It's dry, it's cold, it's like the temperature is good for it, and it's such a large space that I have enough room to store the materials. So that's one of the reasons we give that 2-week window, because if you're requesting something that I know is in the sub basement, you have to give us time to get down there. Because again, our staff also doesn't just cover local history. Sometimes if we have enough call outs, I may be out at the LH2 desk. I may have to go give breaks in another department. So it's too much of an unknown of what's going to happen throughout the week. So we like to give ourselves that 2-week window. We haven't had any issues really as far as appointments. We used to, prior to COVID, we did offer open hours. Nobody ever came during the open hours. They would always show up when we didn't have the open hours. So that's when we decided to go to a complete appointment system in place. As far as school kids, one of the things that we did start about 5 years ago is we work with one of the local high school academies. Their AP US history students, for their last semester of school, they do a local history project. And this is because they're taking the AP exams in the beginning of May, and then they had like almost 2 full months of nothing to do. So we started this program with one of the teachers, and the students come, usually they came this year on January 13th, and I walked them through all our local history and newspaper databases, how to utilize them and everything. They got a tour of the entire local history department, the archives, and then those kids are assigned into groups under different subject matters that have to do with Elizabeth specific history. And then they're responsible for making appointments with me to come in to do their research. And it's teaching them how to use primary documents and how to use archives for research. And we've had quite a lot of success with that project. So yeah, it just depends like how busy we are at the time. Like right now, if somebody were to try to come in after 3 o'clock for an appointment, I would tell them, maybe wait until April, because we're swamped with all these. It's 99 students that we're handling right now. So it's like, it's a lot. But for the most part, I think most of our appointment requests from adults, non-school students, tends to be mornings, early afternoon, situations like that. So it's worked out for us so far. And our usage has definitely gone up quite a lot since we went into this appointment system, which is kind of odd. You would think it would be the opposite, but no, it's working out.
Right. Aimee, I'm glad that's working out. I was about to ask about open hours as well. And my experience is the same as yours, as people don't show up during open hours when we've tried them.
We've had them like evenings and on Saturdays, and it's like, I can honestly say in a 3-year period that we tried doing that, I've had maybe 20 people show up in 3 years. So we're like, it's not worth it. Let's do this system instead. And we've actually seen, like I said, our appointment requests and like access has actually increased versus decreasing. So.
Yeah, that's great. I do see a good question from Jenny in the chat, asking, do you limit what people are allowed to use while accessing local history materials? So no food and drink in the room, pencils as the only writing tool, etc.
Yes. When somebody makes an appointment, we do go ahead and email them the rules of, our room is called the Elizabethtown Reading Room, so we call it the ERR. It's also on the website when they make the appointments. We do not permit any food or drink whatsoever in the room. We do not have lockers for people to put their stuff, but we did make sure near the entrance to have some open shelving that they can put like a backpack or a purse and a jacket, so that they don't have anything with them when they're at the actual research table. They're not allowed to use pens at all in the room for anything, even with our registration form. There is a registration form, and they do have to show ID when they come for their appointment to make sure it is that actual person they have the appointment. And we do keep on our registration form, the front side of the form is where they enter all their personal information, what the topic is that they're researching, and they sign off that they read the rules of the room and everything. On the back slide, we keep a log of the materials they use. So then that comes in extremely handy, especially with high school kids, because a lot of times people will be so excited about what they're looking at, they forget to write down notes on what they were looking at. And then we'll get the phone calls like, oh, I was there 6 months ago and I looked at this book and it had a picture. And we're like, okay, which book? I don't know. So that's why we keep that log sheet, because now we can go back into our binder where we keep them, look up their visit and be like, okay, these are the materials they looked at, and we ask them, can you describe the picture? Can you describe? And then we can figure out which book it is that they used, that the material comes from. But yeah, we definitely limit what we brought in the room. We don't let excessive baggage into the room. You can't have 20 million bags. You can't, suitcases, no, that's a no-no. Also, even when they're using the materials, we're strict on how they use them. If they're going to take notes or something, no writing with the paper on top of the material. The material has to be held separately from the document so that you're not doing imprints or everything on materials. So yeah, there's like a whole bunch of different rules that we have as far as utilizing the materials. One of the things that we don't do that I think that, and I think a lot of archives are kind of moving away from it too, we used to require people to wear gloves when handling certain materials. We kind of instituted a washing your hands and drying them before you come into the room. For the simple fact that I realized if they're not comfortable or if they have either disabilities or manual issues and everything like that, they have a tendency to tear things accidentally. So we kind of got rid of the whole glove thing. We just said, you have to wash your hands before you come into the room, plain and simple, and dry them correctly. So, and then if it's anything that's extremely delicate, like, then my staff or myself will be the one to handle the material for the person. So there's always somebody here with an appointment for that reason. Yes, I just saw the article too at the New York Times. My director sent it to me about ditching the white gloves. Yeah.
I had not seen that article, so I will read that later and share it with everyone as well. So thank you for sharing that. That was great. I guess my question for you, Aimee, is all your policies, are those in writing that you have? Like your collection development policy just for, you know, the historical materials? Okay. That's my next question.
Sure. Like I said, when we were collecting the materials and doing the CAPES evaluation, we did go ahead and do a collection development policy. There is access policies. There are the rules of the room. It's not a quick process. And like I said, in our case, we were lucky enough that we could just close down the department for a couple of months and get at least all the policies and everything in place. But yeah, everything's in writing. Anybody asks for them, we always have them. We used to have them all on the website. People weren't reading them on the website. So we kind of limited the stuff on the website to just the stuff we get asked the most, because it's what they're looking for the most. And then if there's any questions as far as copyrights, policies, publication of materials, we do have those documents that we can send out. So when somebody is actually sending us a research request, if they mention that it's for publication or something, we make sure to include the permission to publish form so that they understand these are the stipulations and the copyright laws. We do kind of put the onus of copyright for materials that we personally don't own copyrights for on the researcher. We don't take that responsibility. We'll make sure our documentation clearly states it's on them to figure out the copyright if it's something that we don't personally own the copyrights for. So, and then even with our microfilm scanner readers, if they go to print or save anything, we have a message pop up that says this is protected under copyright law, whatever, so that, you know, you're kind of getting little bursts of information.
Yeah, I like the question from Marianne asking if it's possible for you to share your policies. If you have them on your website, I can maybe send a link to everyone afterwards.
Do you want all of them, or are there specific ones?
Yeah, Marianne, do you have anything specific that you wanted to see? Anything pertaining to collection development and access?
Okay, those I don't think we have on our website. I'm checking right now. Okay, no, I'd have to send you those.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Feel free to send them after and I can share them with everyone in case other people are interested as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think we're just about at time, but Aimee, this was an amazing presentation. I learned so much from you and from others sharing in the chat. Oh, I see Dana and Gail have one last question. Were you able to get a budget specifically for your collection?
No. I am included as part of the general library budget. I do not have my own budget line. The only line they did create separately for me, and it's only like $1,500 a year, is for if I come across to be able to purchase, if I see a rare map of Elizabeth we don't have, like, let's say on eBay, I have that specific line for items like that. But as far as supplies, archival supplies, anything I need to do, that would come out of the general supply budget line. they didn't do a separate one. And we're currently in talks of trying to figure out if we're going to create there's been a lot of interest in creating a Friends of the Local History Department. So we're considering possibly going that route to have something as a fundraising arm for specifically this collection. But, you know, it's a lot of figuring out, a lot of legalities and a lot of talking, and then planning. So, but unfortunately, no, I don't have a separate budget line just for this collection.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I think that's the case with many of us too, unfortunately. So I think many of us can relate.
Yeah, that's why I said it's something that you can't rush through, and it's something that's not going to be done tomorrow. It's something that you just have to put plans and revisit those plans and keep updating as you go. It's definitely not like one of those collections where you're just going to be like, oh, we're creating a business collection. Okay, let's buy all these books, and there we go, we're done. Keep it moving. It's never going to be that. So, and it's going to constantly be changing. Like I said, a lot of our policies, a lot of our rules, access to collections were changed throughout the years just based on what we saw was happening and in response to the population that utilized the collection. So
yeah, thank you for that honesty and for that feedback and insight. It's been so valuable and helpful. I appreciate you sharing your expertise, and I see so many great feedback in the comments that people really appreciated you sharing your insight with us. Thank you everyone for being here. And thank you again, Aimee. It's been such a pleasure to have you here.